Well, first off, welcome back to the New York stage and the
Thanks.
Portuguese Kid. What has made it so special this time around with being back on stage in New York?
Well, John Patrick Shanley. I think all five of us were absolutely drawn to this just for the opportunity to work with John. And that was not disappointing at all. He is stunning. I know, I agree with whatever they're saying. He's just been extraordinary. The process of doing it was extraordinary. But Lynn Meadow and Manhattan Theater Club had been courting me for a long time. And there was just never a window or a project that quite made sense. And then both of them came available, and we said, yay. And my children were old enough that I didn't feel like a terrible father leaving them behind.
What's it like living in the zany world created by John Patrick Shanley?
Zany. Have any of you seen the play?
Oh, yeah.
It's a rather high-energy piece. It all happens in about 100 and, was it an hour 40, something like that. It is very high energy. It is those slightly, or more than slightly, broadened characters that John likes to play with. The stakes are extremely high for the people engaged in them. I am surrounded by, three extraordinary actresses and one gorgeous young actor. And we just have a blast. There has been, I knew Mary from the Rink. Mary used to cover Liza Minnelli when we were doing the Rink.
Mary Testa.
And now plays my mother. She's 3 years older than me. She plays my mother. Sherry's work I had known, but I didn't know Sherry, and that's just a love fest. She's there's my wife, and there's my goddaughters, and then there's Sherry Renee Scott. And they're just wonderful. And the audiences from Manhattan Theater Club are really extraordinary because I had never done theater in New York that still worked largely on the subscription base. So these are people that come for at least the first 8 weeks who are dedicated to this theater and dedicated to seeing these kinds of plays in New York. And they're just a very unique audience. Some people wander in because they see my name or they see Sherry's name or Mary's name or John's name. And they go, oh, what's this? But then there are the subscribers who go, I don't care what they put up, I'm coming to this theater. And that's really a unique and special situation.
You all sing show tunes backstage, right?
Yeah. Although Sherry is a rock and roller, she's not really into show tunes. She's done 4 of the biggest musicals on Broadway. Yeah, she's more of a rock and roll girl.
Got it. Not only is John the writer, he's also the director.
Yeah.
So what's it like sharing the room with him wearing both hats?
It has challenges and it has rewards.
Yeah.
For the most part, you could say John knows what he wants, but that's not always true. I've never seen anybody more open to his muse than John Patrick Shanley. So it would not be unusual, and in fact it did happen, where he came in the second week of rehearsal and he went, it came to me in a dream last night, rose petals. And we'd say, okay, what about them? He goes, I don't know, but rose petals. And if you've seen the play, it is strewn with rose petals. So, sometimes he knows where he's going, and sometimes he is discovering as much as anybody else. I say it's challenging because I put myself in the position. I haven't directed things I've written, but I've directed things I'm in, and I find I don't do either job as well as I could have if I only did one. And I, with the exception of 1 or 2 film directors who also authored the screenplay, I haven't met anybody who isn't compromising one of those jobs to some degree by doing both. I think there's a gorgeous collaborative tension between a playwright and a director on a new piece, and that I think to eliminate that possibility of that collaboration, sometimes you'll get a great result, and I think John has the result he wants, and we're all happy to be doing it, and the audiences are happy to be seeing it. I would not put myself in that position of writing the next great play and going, and I'm going to direct it. I don't think I would do that, but he's very content with it, and I think if you asked him, he feels, for the most part, I think he said this, that the things he wants to try while he is writing a play, because he wrote every day. I think there are 4 hours of rehearsal available per day in previews. He used every minute of them, and it was all with rewrites. And I once said, we never did the same script 4 times in a row until we froze the play for opening. So a director might have said to him, cut it out. And he had nobody to say cut it out because we were all very amenable to him. So.
I love that. You are, what a great role it must be to play Barry Dragonetti.
Yeah.
You're so hilarious in this. What's it like living in his skin?
It's fascinating, and you know, we still discover it. But what I love about the piece, there are a couple things. One is, the one thing that left, I've lived with the play for a long time. There were very many versions of it. And in one of the versions, John, in glorious detail, explained the Atalanta Greek legend, which has been removed from the show, but she's still called Atalanta. I find the Atalanta story and its modern retelling in our play beautiful. And I love playing the kind of man who gives himself to it. Because that story is basically about a man who... do you know the Atalanta legend? Okay, so I'll do it as quickly as I can. So Atalanta was born of man and woman in ancient Greece, but she was, I think, the daughter of the king of Athens. He didn't want a daughter, so he abandoned her on a mountaintop. She was raised by a she-bear and grew up to be a fierce warrior. When a giant boar was attacking Athens and nobody could defeat the boar, Atalanta came down from the mountain and slew the wild boar. And then her father went, I will reclaim her now for profit. He was going to marry her off to, you know, for enrichment. And she said, I will only marry a man who can beat me in a foot race. And if they don't beat me, you must put them to death. And no man could beat her. Nobody could beat her, and the guys were being slaughtered by the dozens. And I cannot remember the name of the character that actually loved her because of her strength, and wanted to try for her hand, but knew that he would never be able to beat her. So he appealed to Artemis, and he said, is there anything I can do to win her? And Artemis said, because your love is true, I will give you these golden apples. And when you race her, throw the apples in her path. They will distract her. She will stop to pick up the apples, and you will win, which is exactly what he does. And then on their wedding night, he can't live with the guilt. So he says to her, I have not earned you because I cheated. And she says, the apples didn't distract me. I wanted you to win. So I stopped. So it is this beautiful acceptance between a man and a woman not in their typically assigned gender roles. The idea of a man who could love this woman that he's playing so far above the rim. She is brighter than him, stronger than him, wilder than him. And when Barry says at the end of the play, you're right about me, I am a forest creature. I'm a gentle man. And the last line of the play kills me, where she says, you know, I killed both my husbands, I'm just kidding. And I look at her and I go, baby, you're gonna be the death of me. Either way, I don't care anymore, I want you. That kind of guy, I don't get asked to play very often. And I love living in his skin. All I have to do that play, and Sherry and I have a ritual where at places we just stand backstage and we just hug each other for about 15 to 30 seconds. And then we just get each other's energy and go, ready? Ready. And then we just lock into each other and we go. And that's how we do the play. And it's been great.
Because you have like 2 weeks left?
Yeah.
For those of you who have not seen this.
I just told you the ending.
He told you the ending, but just pretend you don't know.
Yeah.
But it's
you kind of see it coming, I gotta say.
It's comic genius at its very best with everybody who's on stage in this show. It's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's such a fun night. I want to go back to the beginning. Growing up, where did your love for performing begin, and what were your earliest creative outlets?
So I grew up first in Maplewood, New Jersey, and then in Livingston, New Jersey. And I am my mother's only child. I have half siblings, but they're 14 and 20 years older than me. I did not really grow up with them. So I was more or less an only child, a latchkey child. My parents both worked, and I would come home to an empty house. And I was, nobody believes me except the people who were around me then, a very shy, introverted, loner and somewhat lonely kid. So my first love, what do you do if you're that? You go into magic. You put a kick me sign on your back and you go into magic. And I thought I was going to be a huge magician. That's all I wanted to do. And when I was 12 years old, we moved to Livingston, New Jersey. And the summer before that, I had gone to magic camp. That's how geeky I was. And I had determined I was never going to be the magician I wanted to be because I could already see my hands were never going to develop into a card and coin kind of hands. And I was devastated. There was nothing for me in the And we moved to Livingston, and I knew nobody. And my mother signed me up for the community pool. And I'm standing in this pool knowing nobody with water up to my chin, and this gorgeous teenage girl comes over and goes, "Hi, do you sing?" I went, "Oh, I do now." And they had a very active teen theater community in Livingston. And they were doing The Sound of Music, and they had lost Friedrich von Trapp. So I became Friedrich von Trapp. And what bowled me over, because I had never been on stage and never thought about it, was the minute I went, "Oh, dear," and they went, "Oh, you're great," and you're in. Instant friends, instant community, instant love, instant, project. I went, where has this been all my life? And I was smitten. And then that group of kids, because we lived so close, would come into New York every weekend. Because for $5 total, you could take the bus, have dinner, and see 2 shows. You could stand as a student at the back of any show for $1. So we would see 2 shows every Saturday. And about 6 months into this new world of mine, Pippin was in previews, the original production of Pippin. Excuse me. And the curtain went up, and there were the hands, and there was Ben Vereen going, "Join us." And I went, okay. And I saw Ben, and I went, it's a magic trick. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. And I went, I can do that trick. And from that point on, that was it.
Isn't that great? Because you originally wanted to be a classical actor.
Yeah.
So how did you move from the classics, and how did you switch to
What are you
comedy?
laughing at? It was I went to Boston University as a theater major, and in my sophomore year, there was a professor named James Spruill, who's no longer with us, African-American man who had come up in the street theater of the 60s, where, you changed the world by doing Oedipus and drag or something like that. But he was one of those professors who he said it and you got it, as opposed to a lot of college professors where they talk for an hour and you go, uh-huh. And he said to me, I'll do my best James Spruill, because he had this big basso voice. And he said, "I know your heart and soul is Hamlet, and you would be a profound Hamlet. You will never play Hamlet. So you best get good at Falstaff." And I went, what? And he was basically saying, if you want to have a commercial career, you have to start thinking, because I was already losing my hair. I was always at least 10 pounds overweight. And there was something that, John Belushi was sort of like in his prime when I was in college, and I had a kind of a Belushi-esque thing. And he said, you have to start looking at comedy, which was, I had never thought. I think in the last 5 years I've gone, I guess I'm a little funny, but I never thought of myself as funny. And I started really watching and listening. I got all the comedy albums, and I started really watching great comedic performances and going, why are they funny? And trying to learn and steal, and so that was the switch over. And he was right. I mean, if I only, Paul Giamatti is the bold guy with the dramatic roles, and I get the other ones. Or Nathan. Nathan has hair, but that's it. It's the 3 of us. That's all you got.
Going into it, you've actually come full circle with Manhattan Theater Club because you met your acting teacher through Manhattan Theater Club, didn't you? Larry Moss. You all know Larry Moss? Yeah. Did your wife introduce?
Dana had studied with Larry at Circle in the Square when he used to teach there, and she was touting him. And I had, at that point, I had left college early, and I was looking for the teacher that would put it all together, and I studied with big names, and they were all terrific, but it just wasn't, I wasn't understanding it. And I did a workshop of a musical at Manhattan Theater Club, Maureen Brennan, who had been so wonderful in Candide years ago, and an actor who was passed named Ray Gill, who I loved very dearly, were both brilliant, and they were both Larry Moss students. And so he came to see this workshop and came right over to me at the end and went, "You're very good. I can make you much better." And I went, "Really?" And he said, "I'll change your career in a year." And he did. He did. Larry brought me a clarity that no one else was able to give me, and that I was able to. I studied with him on and off for 14 years, and I teach now, and the basis of what I teach is what he gave me, and then my own building on that. But yeah, he changed my career, absolutely.
Because we have so many actors in the house today, and watching this, did he demystify the acting process for you?
He did, because the first class that I took with Larry was his musical class, doing his thing, but doing it in song. So not only did you have to you had to learn the craft of making choices in order to get through Larry's class. And he was very precise on showing you what you do in what order in any material to make choices. But then there was the added technicalities in song that David Craig teaches, where if you're going to physicalize a lyric, you physicalize it before the lyric, not on the lyric. Because if you do it on the lyric, you get children's theater. The sun will come out tomorrow. So, but if you go, the sun will come out tomorrow, you go, oh, wow. So you had to know what you were doing, you had to be able to physicalize it, what you were doing, you had to own it. And it was very, very, very specific. And then after a year and a half of studying that, I went into the scene study and took all of that technique and was able to start working it into non-musical material. But yeah, he was absolutely brilliant.
Because that first musical class, you did Love Revolution from I Love My Wife?
Eventually, that was the one where Larry went, you got it.
Yeah.
I took a song, and that was a woman's song from I Love My Wife, made it a guy's song about a geeky guy transforming into a still somewhat geeky, but ladies' man. Yeah. And it was full of choices, and I did it once, and the class went crazy, and he went, do it again. And I did it again, and he went, you know how to work now. So
it's all about making specific choices.
It's asking certain questions in the right order all the time and being brutal about the specificity of your answers.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That's great. On stage, you have worked with some of the greatest artists, so let's just chat about some of the highlights and just tell me what comes to mind, a fond memory or a great story. Your Broadway debut in the Stephen Sondheim, George Firth, and Harold Prince musical, Merrily We Roll Along. Mm-hmm. Favorite memories? I mean, look at the men you got to work with.
Petrified at all times. I actually said this when I was hosting a tribute to Hal a couple weeks ago, and I mean, there's 1,000 stories. I mean, if you want a cute Sondheim one, the song It's a Hit, which opens Act 2, was not in the show when we started rehearsals, and Steve came up to me and said, I'm writing a song, and you're going to figure prominently in that song, and anything I don't know about your instrument. I said, no, I think you know everything about my instrument. What you may not know is I don't hear chromatics very well, so sharps and flats are really hard for me. He goes, good to know, good to know. And he comes back 5 days later with a song that is nothing but chromatics. It literally goes, hold it, folks, there's still the reviews left, both the trip and the news left early. I mean, it was just like, he sang it and I turned white, and I said, Steve, oh my God, Steve, either I misspoke. I didn't misspeak. Either I misspoke or maybe you misheard. But I said, I don't hear chromatics very well. And he said, no, I know. You have to learn. Wow. Wow. So, you know, it was that kind of genius going on. But the amazing thing for me as a young actor about Merrily, with fantasies about directing and, you know, and having other kinds of careers, was watching the gods become mortal. They sweat. They couldn't solve it. They couldn't figure it out. And while it was painful at the time, because we knew it was unlikely they were going to crack it, watching them struggle and work and you know, try, and seeing that it didn't matter how many times they had been geniuses. Every time you get up, you're at square one, and you're as good as you are at that moment. That was a valuable, valuable lesson.
Stephen Sondheim paid you a big compliment, didn't he, in the book? In his book, Finishing the Hand?
He did. If I remember it, he said, I don't think he disparaged the rest of the cast,
No,
but he
not at all.
said, because we were all children, playing adults, he singled me out and said the only one that really could do it was me. And I don't know why he thought that. It was probably because I was going bald, but it was a very nice thing for him to say.
Yeah, really great. The John Kander, Fred Ebb, Terrence McNally musical, The Rink, which I told you upstairs, one of my favorite musicals of all time. Yeah. I mean, he appeared opposite Chita Rivera and Liza Minnelli. Favorite memory of that?
Favorite memory is the one that when people say to me, do you have a role model for your career as an actor? I always say Chita Rivera. I actually said to Chita, when I tell you this story, I ended by saying, Chita, I want to be you when I grow up. So there was a policy for that show. If Liza was out, the audience could get a refund or they could book for another night. They didn't have to sit there and watch the understudy. And the Rink was created for Chita. Liza was nobody's idea of ever going to be a part of this. And then Liza came on board, and of course, that created an energy, and in many circles, the attention went to Liza and off of Chita. Well, Chita always handled that with enormous grace. But on this one night when Liza was out, the stage managers went to Chita and said, honey, there's about 100 people in the house, and it's a 1,200-seat house. He said, it's up to you. You want to do it, we'll do it. If you don't want to do it, we won't do it. And she said, there were 6 guys in the show. She said, have the boys come down. So we all went into her dressing room, and she said, here's the story. We can walk away or we can do this. If we walk away, we're going to lose 1/8 of your salary. And I know she knew we were all living on that salary. She said, so if you want to do it, let's go out and do it, and we'll have a great time. We know how to play in this show. We'll have fun. We'll have a blast. It'll be a nice sort of big put-in rehearsal for Mary Testa. And she made it sound like it would be, you know, just a party to do. And as we were all going, oh, yeah, she said, but the 100 people that stayed. You give them the show. And if you can't do that, we don't do this. And I just went, who are you? Who are you? I mean, you know, it was such a slap in the face, potentially, to have 100 people out of 1,200 stay because they didn't get to see Liza when they're still seeing Chita. And she handled it with that kind of grace and dignity and professionalism. And I went, I want to be you when I grow up. And she has never been topped for me in that regard.
And Chita Rivera went on to win Best Actress in a Musical for The Rink. Yeah, really great. Neil Simon's Broadway Bound. I mean, look at that cast. Look at your director, Gene Sachs.
Yeah. Linda Lavin, John Randolph, Jonathan Silverman, Phyllis Newman, Phil Sterling. It was great. It was great. There was a performance of that show. Here's the actor's nightmare. You want a story from that show? It changed my whole life. I always have to tell my dressers, I'm going to be in the bathroom at 1 hour before, half hour before, 15, 10, 5, and places. And they go, really? And I go, and I'm not a drug addict. I will tell you why. So when I entered Act 1 in Broadway Bound, I was going to be on that stage for 1 hour and 5 minutes. And I'm in the wings waiting for my cue, and I'm hearing a rumbling. And I'm going, nah, I'm fine. And I set my foot on that stage, and we went to DEFCON 4. I mean, it was just, oh my God, oh my God. And there's no, what do you do? What do you do? And the worst part was there was a period where there's a big scene between Linda Lavin and Phil Sterling where the 2 boys are on stage asleep in our beds. And I'm like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. And now the set of Broadway Bound was a house, an entire house. There's a bathroom. The plumbing is not attached to anything. And I actually was thinking, am I there? Am I gonna relieve myself on a Broadway stage in a non-working toilet? And the only reason I didn't, really, is I thought, no matter what else I do in my career, I will always be that guy. And I managed to get through that performance. And Linda Lavin, I took 10 minutes off that act, and Linda's like, what's going on with you? Like, get out of my way. Yeah, so. Yeah.
That is hilarious, my friend. Jerome Robbins Broadway, where you won the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical. You originally turned down auditioning for the show, didn't you?
3 times.
3 times?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I didn't get it. I know who Jerome Robbins is. I know the dances he creates, and this show is described to be by my friend, Manny Eisenberg. This is a great review of all his greatest dance numbers from the theater. Okay. I can't dance them, so what do I do? He goes, you're the host, you're the glue, I went, you mean like if I was hosting the Tonys? I don't want to do that 8 times a week. That's not an actor's job. You'll be Tevye. For like what? Half a number? What what are we talking about? I couldn't see it. And but Manny had done me a favor during Broadway Bound, and he called the favor in, and the favor was you have to meet him and you have to audition for him. And the minute I walked in the door to meet him, the first words out of his mouth were, forgive the profanity, why the fuck have I had so much trouble getting you to audition for my show? That's the first thing he says to me. And I said, with all due respect, Mr. Robbins, I don't want to be in your show. And he said, what? And I said, don't misunderstand. I'm going to be the first guy in line to buy a ticket, but I don't understand. I can't dance your material. I'm not that kind of a dancer, and I just don't understand it. And what Manny has told me, it doesn't sound interesting to me as an actor. And he said, do you know Fiddler on the Roof? I went, I'm a Jew. And he said, go over there and sing Sunrise, Sunset. And I went, pfft. So I sing Sunrise, Sunset, and I look back at him at the end of the song, and there's a tear coming down his face, and I went, I'm in trouble. But what got me to do the show is he said, look, he did not know how to make it an evening. He knew the pieces he wanted to do, but not how to present them as a whole. And I had done some writing during Broadway Bound that had amused Manny and Neil Simon. And Manny had sold him on the idea that I could author the connective material as well as play it. And he said, I'm impressed with you, so I understand your issue. Do me a favor, get me to opening night. And if you're not happy with what you do at opening night, I don't care what your contract says, I'll let you go. And I went, he's one of the greatest directors. I want to be a director. How bad could it be to sit at his feet for 6 months and write a Broadway show for him? So that's why I took the gig. I said, this will do nothing for me as an actor. Boom, Tony Award. So, that's how I govern my own career.
But what was it like working with him, like being in that room? 6 months.
Do you know A Tale of Two Cities? Yes. It begins, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Jerry was everything he was ever rumored to be. He was an absolute genius. I have never seen anybody more brilliant, creative, visionary. He was an absolute maniac. And he had demons the likes of which I've never seen again. And he loved our company, but there was still incredibly cruel things that happened. But he was surrounded by dancers, and there was nobody who could give a dancer a bigger gift than Jerry Robbins. And so they all just ate it because they got to do that thing. And he elevated every one of them from dancer to actor.
Yeah.
And it was extraordinary. I mean, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. But there were days where he and I, because I didn't think the show was going to do anything for me, and I was equity deputy, I had to face off with him on a number of occasions, and it was tricky. My favorite story is, in his contract, it said that if he pulled out before opening night, the show couldn't open. And by the time we got into rehearsals, they were already $3 million in. It would eventually go to $9 million, which was huge back then. And for the flying number in Peter Pan, Jerry had seen a production of Peter Pan where Tinkerbell was a laser. It was this animated 3D laser. And apparently to rent the laser was $3,000 a week, and the guy running the laser only did that, and he was $1,200 a week. So it's, it's like $5,000 a week for Tinkerbell, who's not in the number. It was just in a... And Jerry Schoenfeld, rest his soul, came to me because he knew I was the guy that was unafraid. He said, can you get him off the goddamn laser? And I said, maybe. Let me try. So we were in tech rehearsal, and he's doing the laser, and I sat right behind Jerry Robbins, and I'm watching him, and the laser was spectacular, by the way. And I went, yeah, I guess. And he was like, what? And I said, no, no, Jerry, you're right. It's just, we've been doing everything the way it was presented originally because the work was strong enough then that it would carry now. But you're right, I'm not sure that this number is strong enough without sort of a modern dressing up. And he went, of course it is! Of course it is! Laser was gone, it was a little pin spot. And Jerry Schoenfeld was like, you are my God. You are golden with me. So it was things like that. That's how I got to see the inner workings of putting together a gigantic Broadway show. And it was, like I said, I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
It was still one of the most spectacular nights. I know some of you in the audience saw Jerome Robbins Broadway. Just an incredible night. You should have been a producer, too.
That's okay. Got it. I have been, and it's okay.
You don't want that job anymore.
I don't want it.
You are known to millions of TV fans around the world for creating the iconic role of George Costanza on the phenomenon known as Seinfeld. How did you get cast?
Straight up audition, but not with... Seinfeld all happened in L.A. I was still living here. I guess they had exhausted a lot of people in L.A., and they called a local casting director and said, it's this type. Can you put 20, 30 guys on tape? I got called in. There were 4 pages of a script. That was all I had. I read it and said, it feels like a Woody Allen movie to me. So hence the glasses that I didn't wear at the time. And the New York accent was not just a New York accent. I was blatantly doing Woody Allen. Blatantly, on that first audition. I was just, Jerry, you don't understand. And I did the tape, and I went, I'll never see that again. And then Jerry and Larry called 2 weeks later and said, we really like what you did. We want to fly you out to test for the network. And I got out there and met Larry, and he said, love everything you did. Keep the New York, just tone down the Woody, but keep everything else. And read with Jerry in the room and said, bye. Got on a plane. By the time I landed here, had it.
Wow. Right? One of the greatest TV sitcoms of all time, but there wasn't much faith in the show early on from the network, was there?
Zero. We did the pilot, it was dropped. I mean, we were released from our contract. But back then, before HBO was around, but there was no internet and there were not 500 channels. So the networks used to burn off their dead pilots and just show them at some crazy hour. Excuse me. And I think it was the TV Guide critic who wrote this amazing response to it. And it was Brandon Tartikoff was running NBC at the time, and he went, and what they noticed was that the test audience that did respond to it was men 18 to 35, which is a very tough demo to get for advertisers. They weren't coming in droves, but the people that were coming were them, so the advertisers were always willing to put up a little bit of money for the show, and we just strung along. Our first season was, we did the pilot, that review came out. They said, would you guys come back and do 4 more? I mean, there's a confidence vote. Yeah, sure. So we did 4, and then that didn't test well, but then they kicked it all over the schedule, and then they said, well, maybe mid-season, so we did 13, and those 13 aired in 4 different time slots. If you wanted to watch us, you'd have to figure out where the hell we were. And somehow we got a pickup for a full season for a 3rd season. And that's when the show was really coming into its own. And they finally put us on after Cheers, which was the do or die slot. Because Cheers had the #1 audience. And if you didn't hold a goodly percentage of it, that was the test and you'd be done. And our first episode, we dropped very little. The second episode we held. And the 3rd episode was the masturbation contest. And we were golden from that point on. But yeah, up until that, it was dicey at best.
But you hear these stories over the years, like shows like MASH, All in the Family, all went through the same thing that you did.
I didn't know. I thought maybe MASH should come out.
There were a few of them that had the same sort of thing that, the first episode sort of tanked, and thank God someone held on to them and they went on to become the greatest.
You could cook for longer then.
You can't cook more than like 2 or 3 now.
if you're not pulling
Yeah.
some weight by 3 or 4 in, yeah, it's hard.
What a perfect foursome. What was it like working on that set every week?
Exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
So here's the part that everybody goes, oh, really? So the 4 of us are not close social friends. There's a huge affection.
Yeah.
But we didn't like do a show and then go, hey, let's have dinner tomorrow night. We all went off and did our own lives. And so when the show ended, we really have seen each other maybe 4 times since the show ended. But on that set, we just kind of grooved on each other. I mean, we made each other laugh. And very quickly, even though the show was hanging by a thread, a lot of actors in that scenario would think, well, let me take care of myself, so I'll have some tape, at least, to get out of this thing. But we kind of just went, ugh, you know, the line's funny on me, but it'd be better on Julia. And we started showing each other things that we could do and more or less directing each other. Our director was never an actor director, he was more of a camera director. So whatever we were doing in front of those cameras was being created by the 4 of us together. And the act of doing that was very bonding, made the ensemble happen very, very quickly because we were all looking out for each other. And we just laughed ourselves sick. And I kept saying to my wife, I go down there for maybe 6 hours a day, most days, laugh my ass off, and I go home and they pay me. Eventually someone's gonna catch on that this is not a real job. But, and that's what it was. And it was that all the way through, all 9 years. And it's, you know, when you sign a contract like that, it's an arranged marriage. You don't know who you're meeting. You go, gee, I hope I like this person. It was a glorious arranged marriage. We just loved playing with each other.
And working with Larry David then?
I always loved Larry. I always saw the genius of Larry, certainly much more than the network did. Larry and I really bonded when I came to understand that George was an alter ego for Larry. I didn't know that going in, and I've told this story many times. But I can't remember the episode. But it was within the first 10, and we did a table read, and I went to Larry and I said, "You got to help me because this would never happen to anybody. But if it did, no one would react like this." And he went, "What are you talking about? This happened to me, and this is exactly what I did." And I went, "Oh." And that put it in my head that George is some version of Larry. And then I started doing George really as an homage of Larry David. You know, taking all of what I saw was glorious in Larry, and using it. And I think that was very bonding because, you know, he's called me for Curb, he called me for Fish in the Dark. I mean, you know, it's, again, we're not tight buddies, but there's a real mutual admiration society there. I always loved that we were very much on the bubble all the time in the beginning, and there was an episode, the Chinese restaurant episode, was like number 6 or 7. I was very early on. And we did the table read, and usually the network dismisses everybody except the producers before they start giving notes. But they were so rankled by this episode that the minute we went, and the end, I remember Warren Littlefield going, "Are you crazy? Nothing happens. There's no story. They're just waiting for a table. Why? You know the show's not performing. Why would you do this? Why?" Now, if I were running a show and my network reacted like that, I'd go, maybe we table this one. Larry went, "They didn't say don't do it." And so we did it. And I love that episode. But that was the moment where I went, these guys they are doing the thing they want to do. They see it and they believe in it. And to me, I wish our industry would learn from that example, that the trick is take something you believe in, staff it with people you believe in, and leave them the hell alone. You know, help. You know, you can say, I don't understand that story point, or I'm missing the character, or, you know, you can even as a network say, you know, the audience is responding to the girl. Can we have a little more with the girl? But to say, this joke doesn't work, and you go, really? What was your background? Marketing? And we're going to get into a pissing match over what's funny? they quickly, every time they challenged Larry, he would quit.
Yeah.
And they went, we can't talk to this guy, so we don't talk to this guy. And he did the show he wanted to do, and boom, you get Seinfeld.
There you go.
So
that's great.
yeah.
Being a stage actor, how challenging was it for you to find how to play George for both the cameras and the live audience?
Yeah, and that was actually the trick. So in a multicam, if you've ever been to those tapings, you think it's theater because there's a live audience, but there is a wall of technology between you and that audience, and they're not even really looking at the floor. They're looking at the monitors above their heads. They're watching TV, and you're right there. And I used to, being a theater actor in the early days, I would try, so our audience would begin where you guys are, on that level. You were that far away. And I would begin by trying to throw my performance, like a good stage actor, over to there. And it would blow away the cameras. So in watching episodes, so I didn't start to learn my lesson probably until somewhere in that late second, early third season, when I could see enough of them done on TV to go, oh, I know, I see what I'm doing. So I had to learn that the trick was to do a performance for the cameras that was vocally projected to the live audience. Because if we worked for the cameras right here, they wouldn't get it. But if we worked for the cameras right here, and all I'm doing is changing the vocal quality, they would get it. And that was really the only adjustment we had to make, that I had to make.
Yeah, brilliant, because it's a big difference.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah. When the show finally went off the air, what did you miss the most right away?
Just the family.
Yeah.
We were done with the show. We were fine being done with the show. We felt like the characters could no longer be surprising. They could be funny. We had great writers, and we could be endlessly funny. But you kind of knew what every character would more or less do in any given situation, and that's a pretty good indicator of head out. So it wasn't about, oh, I wish we had done more, or we never did this story. We had essentially the same crew for 9 years, certainly the same core cast for most of those years, and it was a very familial feeling of coming to work and being with all those people. And, you know, you just know once the project is done, yes, you've got this bond, but it's never going to be. It's like when the kids go off to college. Yeah, you're still a family, but now they visit. So, you know, and that's what, I think that's what any and all of us missed, was just that seeing each other and having that thing to do every week.
You know, again, we have so many actors here who struggle with auditioning. Mm-hmm. They know they have talent, but don't audition well. Mm-hmm. Did you always audition well? Or do you like auditioning?
Apparently well enough. I mean, I always liked auditioning. Even when I wasn't quite sure what my technique was, I thought, well, this is an opportunity. It's my opportunity. And, you know, I know so many actors that go, I hate audition. I go, really? When you were starting, all you wanted was to get the audition. Now you're getting them, and you go, I hate this. And I go, well, you're in the wrong business. So I liked auditioning, and I liked it more when as my technique developed, and I went, aha, I know how to use this opportunity now. But yeah, there's no, I think the only reason to hate an audition is sometimes we are greeted with a room that does not seem enthusiastic, and you have to know how to play with that and negate that and work within that. I can tell you from being on the other side of the table in those rooms, it's not that we are unenthusiastic. It's that 50 of you have come in and have disappointed us, and we have no reason to believe that 51 won't do the same. But we are actually waiting for one to come in and do something that's going to excite us. And you have to, I think you have to know what you're doing. You have to be, you know, if you give somebody an opportunity that they're not ready for, they're going to blow the opportunity. A lot of actors get the opportunity before they really own their craft. And it's unfair, because when you blow that opportunity, it's hard to get another one. But by the same token, you don't want to say no to an opportunity. So the trick is to be constantly working and refining your craft. I tell actors, student actors all the time, study, 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 study. Get up and do it, get up and do it, get up and do it. And either, I mean, I love the methodology that I've been raised in and that I teach, but there's lots of ways to do this. Find the one that is surefire for you and do the work and put the work in. make those opportunities pay off, you know. There should be no reason to hate auditioning, unfortunately.
Great advice. You recently returned to Broadway, replacing your friend Larry David in his hit show, Fish in the Dark. What did you enjoy the most?
So I have in the last couple of years tried to transition out. I'm trying to be Joe Mantello. I'm trying to do much less acting and much more directing and some other things. So I had forgotten how joyful it can be when an audience has that good a time. If you perform live because you like that communication with the audience and they're having that experience, it's like, you know, you're Superman, you're flying. And riding the wave of that enthusiasm is a real thrill. It's balanced with, that was an unbelievably difficult show to do. I had gout at one point during that show. I only had 4 days of rehearsal, so, and only one with the cast. So when I did my first performance, I had not learned how to vocally modulate that show, and I like blew out my chords on the first performance, and so I was always rehabilitating that. I pulled a calf muscle on stage one night that I needed physical therapy for 2 weeks. I went, I'm Job in this damn thing. So, and it's a show. It was daunting because Larry was scoring so well in that play because he wasn't an actor. And part of the joy of watching him was watching him be a fish out of water. And the audience was loving the fact that he's not an actor with all these actors, and he's kind of wonderfully terrible in his own way. I mean, it's not an actor's performance, it's a personality's performance, and a big, funny personality. And I knew if I went in and did what he was doing, they'd kill me. And I had to figure out how do you get the same blueprint of laughs that he's found, but do it from within the play instead of a guy sitting on top of the play. And it was a challenge. And the cast was, I mean, you know, Ben Shankman and Jane Howdy. It was just that glorious, huge, Scott Rudin's out of his mind. 6 sets and 21 actors for a play? What, are you crazy? And he figured out how to do it.
Well, I saw you twice in that, and you were flawless both times.
Oh,
so you camouflaged beautifully, my friend.
Thank you.
You camouflaged
the gout,
beautifully.
was I limping on the right foot?
How much fun was it sharing the stage with Martin Short in The Producers?
Unbelievable.
How did you keep a straight face?
I didn't. Marty had a moment. Marty and I actually were very disciplined in that show. And for Marty, unbelievably disciplined. There was really only one section where we would ever screw around. It was always Marty. And it was the moment where we're sitting in the director's house waiting for him to come on. And we're sitting on that couch that looks like a giant mouth. And Marty has a bit, which is staged into the show, where he can't get comfortable on it. And he tries to put his arm on the back and slides off, and his head winds up in my crotch as if he's filleting me. And then he would react to that. Now, then he has a line, and that cues the director to come on. It's all up to him. Well, he would come up out of my lap, and it was the Martin Short show. And he would, if somebody famous was in the audience, Marty was now them. If there was something topical he wanted to talk about, that's where we would go. And I would just, initially I'd just go, are you kidding me? How are you, and then I would just go on his ride, and 6 out of 8 times he would break me, and 1 out of the 6 I'd have to leave the stage for a minute and hit my asthma inhaler and come back on. And he's heaven. I adore him. And if you want to read a really good celebrity autobiography, Marty's is really worth it, because he's a guy that's had a disproportionate amount of tragedy in his life. And I've never seen anybody insist on and find their way to happiness the way he does. He just will not wallow in grief or negativity. He finds a way out, and you get that in the book, and it's magical.
It's a great book.
Yeah, it is.
Throughout your career, you have had a very lucrative commercial career.
Yes, I have.
Yes, you have. Did you do one for a carpet fiber? Mm-hmm. What was that commercial? It
was a carpet fiber, and the selling point was that stains just don't stick to it. So to demonstrate that fact, I was standing in a giant version of that carpet where the fibers were, 10 feet high, and they dumped 90 gallons of cream of mushroom soup on it and me, and only I was covered in cream of mushroom soup. And we did 9 takes, and of course they went with the first one, because after you've been hit with 90 gallons of cream of mushroom soup, there is a nanosecond where you do the cue and go, and stains, and would blow every other take. So 9 showers, 9 outfits, and they used the first take. But.
So when you found out, did they explain the commercial to you?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And you were like, I'm doing it.
Oh, yeah, I was not a celebrity. Yeah. I was a journeyman actor looking for a gig. That was a good gig, yeah.
You have done a lot of directing on both stage and screen. Did you transition easily?
Stage, yes. I guess it depends who you ask. The first thing I did with cameras was a Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And that was relatively smooth because 4-camera sitcoms are not terribly cinematic. The cameras don't do that much. It's almost camera class 101. Masters, overs, a slight pan or a dolly. But then my manager is here. At the time was my directing and literary agent. And after I did one episode of Seinfeld, she said, now we have to get you a feature to direct. And I went, sure. And then she did. So I did a feature called For Better or Worse.
Yeah.
And I remember the night before we started, the shooting, I was in bed with my wife and I went, in 8 hours, there's about 200 people waiting for me to tell them what to do, and they all know it much better than I do. This is going to be very interesting. But I only have directed stuff that I kind of could direct. I mean, you don't give me a horror film. I don't have that DNA thing that goes, put the scary thing over there and wait 12 seconds and I love those movies. I don't know how to do them. If you put a green screen in front of me as a director, I throw up. I'm not interested. I like stories about people, and then it's about performance and storytelling, and I move and put the camera in a place that is going to dance with those performances. And you develop your camera aesthetic very quickly, I think. And then you watch other stuff and you go, that's good.
Well, you talked about one of your favorite directors, which was Joe Mantello, who directed you in the film version of Love, Valor, Compassion.
Yeah.
What makes him such a wonderful director?
Well, many things. Joe was an uneasy film director. That's his only film, and he says he'll never do another. I think he had a rough experience on it. We had a great experience. Joe taught me something that I teach all the time now and has saved me as an actor and saved me as a director. So if you know the piece, there's that aria monologue that Buzz has. Yeah. And I knew, or I felt I knew, that the job of this was to be so emotionally engaged with it that I would have an emotional breakdown, which is what Buzz does in that scene, I thought. And I hadn't been called on to do that kind of work in a while, so those muscles were like, I was a little nervous about that. And I worked my ass off to prep, and now we go in and we're doing take after take, and it's all coming, and the tears are flowing, and I'm going, yeah. And Joe comes over, and he goes, that's so good. We got it. It's so good. I just want to try something. Let's do one where the whole thing, you just get, my acting partner in that scene was Steven Spinella. And he said, just the end of the monologue, Buzz says to Steven's character, do you swear to me when it's my turn to die that you will be there for me and that the last face I see on this world will be yours? That's when, and he said, I want you to do the whole monologue to get him to agree to that. And I went, Joe, this is a 3-page monologue. I can't just do that. There's a how? And he goes, I know, but we have it. We have everything else. Just see what that does. Just see, maybe there'll be a piece of something. So I do another take where I abandoned all that work that I had done and focused on Steven and giving this piece to him so that he would have no choice but to agree. In every other take that I had done, I'm crying like a fiend, and Stephen was fine. In this take, I'm fine, although I think it was a very emotional performance when I look at it, but Stephen's a mess. And Joe came over and he went, "You know that's the one." And I went, and what he taught me is one of the most valuable lessons I have and that I teach as an actor, which is, a lot of actors believe that you need to feel the thing you're portraying. I don't believe that. It's great when it happens, it's magical when it happens, but it's not the thing we strive for. I always say to actors now, I don't care what you feel, I care what you make your partner feel. Do things to your partner. You never owe me an emotion, you owe me an intention. Do something. And the glorious thing about that is feelings do not always create actions. Actions almost always create feelings. So when I go out in Portuguese Kid, there are times when I'd rather be doing anything but going out on stage doing the Portuguese Kid. But you play the first you zero in on Sherry Renee, and you play the first 4 actions, and suddenly the instrument engages. That knowledge came to me from Joe Mantello. And he is magical with actors. He has a bullshit meter that is unprecedented. He understands. Another thing that I say all the time is there are no conversations in the theater. Sometimes actors go, "Look, we're having a conversation. It feels so real." And you go, "Yeah, who cares? I don't pay $150 for you to have a conversation." So something else has to be going on underneath that conversation. Joe is very good at not letting conversations happen in the theater. I think that's the only reason that The Humans became what it became, because if I look at that script, I go, not much happens here. I mean, there's small events, but it's not Death of a Salesman. There's not a revelatory moment. But the power of that piece in that production was Joe finding what's really at play underneath this rather pedestrian dialogue at times. And he just has, and I don't know if it's something he's aware he's doing or if it's just instinctual, but it's spectacular and consistent in all his work.
If you haven't seen the film version of Love, Valor, Compassion, you need to see it. It's absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, I love that scene because it's right. Stephen was a master in that scene that you delivered. Yeah. Really, really wonderful.
Thanks.
Your first film was a horror movie. Speaking of horror movies, The Burning?
Yeah.
Holly Hunter's first too?
Yeah.
What was it like? I love to ask stage actors, what was it like being on a film set for the first time?
Well, I'd done a lot of commercials, so it wasn't, it wasn't daunting, and it all took place at a summer camp, and so it was like going to camp. It was fine. It was a low budget, Fast and Furious, and get done, and so we went to camp. We were all having a good time. It was not daunting. I don't think I was particularly good in it, but and it was the beginning of trying to understand. In a commercial, you're more or less dealing with the camera all the time. In the movie, you're pretending the camera's not there. And I still am learning how to do what we do and have this machine over here and not give it attention. I'm still, in my current series, which is single camera instead of multi-camera, by the 3rd week in, I was getting used to this machine being over here. But the first 2 weeks, it was like, "Did you get out of here? I'm working with this person." So, and movie actors just have an innate ability to be able to make that camera go away.
And sometimes they don't work well on stage because the performance is way too small.
Correct.
Or internal.
Yeah.
Interesting. You're also a Trekkie.
Original series only.
Star Trek fans from the original, yes.
Yeah.
Originally shot at Jesse
I
Lou.
wanted to be Captain Kirk. Remember when I said I only classical roles? There were 2 guys that made me want to be an actor. Ben Vereen, who I thought I could be, a little white Jewish kid from New Jersey. And a captain, I wanted to be Bill Shatner. And my college audition for Boston University, I did the opening monologue of Equus. I'd never had an acting class in my life. So to me, Bill Shatner is that's how you act. If you're going to do drama, you're Bill Shatner. And I actually did with one particular horse called Nugget. He embraces the animal. And I did Shatner, and I was auditioning for a guy named William Lacey, who had done Shakespeare with Bill as young men in Canada, and he said, I don't know if you can act, that's the best Bill Shatner imitation I've ever seen. And he took me into the school. So.
But you did Star Trek Voyager, right? You
Yeah.
played an alien. Because they had asked you before.
They wanted to be a human, and I don't do humans. Not in space, I was an alien, yeah.
So what was it like being made up? And didn't you?
My son had the definitive, I had spent 3 hours in the makeup chair, and I thought I looked just cool as hell. And my older son was about 10 at the time, and I said, Gabe, come on down, you gotta see Dad. And he comes in and looks at me and goes, you look like snot. And I went,
But maybe that was good. Like, I'm an alien, I look like snot.
Right.
You had a fun time doing that, didn't you?
Yeah, we had a great time. I mean, Kate Mulgrew was fabulous. It was just, my scenes were all Kate Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan, so no matter where you looked, you were happy. It was all good.
I love it. You've done so many wonderful films. Do you have a favorite role on film that you've done?
Love
for whatever
Valor,
reason?
probably.
Love Valor, yeah.
You know, that was the one that I was proudest of. Pretty Woman was a ton of fun, but we had no idea when we were making it was going to be Pretty Woman. In fact, I think all of us would have bet against it. Shallow Hal was a ton of fun. The Farrellys they were so much fun. Jack was so much fun. Not the greatest film, but Rocky and Bullwinkle was fun because I'm standing there with De Niro, and people are going, "You're in a De Niro film," and I go, "Kinda." But it was, and I was so intimidated by him for the first 2 weeks that I didn't know how to speak to him. I don't know if he, wants to be spoken to. Rene Russo and I were like two little chatterboxes, but. And I felt like, oh my God, we're like excluding him. Maybe this is weird. And I remember, I don't know what came over me, but one day we were doing a scene and we were on our marks, and one of the camera guys said, Bobby, could you move over, could you move a step to your right? And I don't know why I did this. I went, hold on, Bobby, hold on. Who the fuck are you to tell this man to move over? Bobby De Niro doesn't move over a foot. You move your goddamn camera. Where are you going? Come on, Bobby, you stay right where you are. They adjust to you. All right, Bobby? Bobby, you with me, Bobby? And he's laughing his ass off, and I go, okay. Busting his balls is the way to bond with Robert De Niro. And I thought this is why Pesci worked with him in so many films.
That's a great story. You also did 2 musicals for television, Albert Peterson.
Yeah.
The Dick Van Dyke role in Bye Birdie opposite Vanessa Williams.
Yeah.
And of course, Cinderella opposite Bernadette Peters.
Everybody.
Everybody was in that.
Yeah.
What was it like being on those sets of those? Was it like being on a movie musical set, like the old Hollywood? What was it like for those?
Cinderella was. Bye Birdie was all shot up in Vancouver, most of it on location. I remember when Gene Saks called me to say, hey, kiddo, Bye Birdie. And I think he's calling about the Paul Lynde role. And he's going, and by the way, Vanessa Williams will be playing Rosie. And I went, okay. So, when you kiss her, and I'm going, like, when did Paul Lynde kiss Rosie? And he goes, I finally said, Gene, what part are you talking about? He went, Albert. I went, Albert? I went, oh, okay. Then here's how cool a guy Dick Van Dyke is.
Yeah.
I had never met Dick. That TV movie aired, and the next day I got a bouquet of flowers at my house with a note that said, now I know how to do the role. You were great. Love, Dick Van Dyke. So that was lovely. Cinderella was a blast.
Yeah.
The thing that was funny about Cinderella is it was the colorblind casting.
Yeah.
And that was not a common thing when we shot that film. And I think all of us were going, is this going to work? You got Victor Garber is the king, Whoopi Goldberg is the queen, and the prince is Filipino. Cinderella's black, the stepmother's white, one stepsister's black, the other one is a red-headed ginger. And we just went, how is this going to... Okay, and we started working on it, and we went, okay, this makes perfect sense. The only time I got hysterical was I play the guy who has to try the glass slipper on all the girls of the kingdom. And they've lined up 100 girls, and I get the giggles. And somebody comes over and goes, why are you laughing? I went, I understand that in this world, color doesn't matter. But she was black. We have white girls, Asian girls. Why don't you put a horse in the line? Do we not know? Can't we limit it down to the African-American girls? Can't we just, and I just didn't understand how this was going to work. And it works beautifully.
That's great. Voiceover work, you do a lot of that.
Uh-huh.
Current series, Kody Kapow. Yeah, I was watching all of those. I watched them with my nieces and nephews. Goji, like, what do you love the most about doing that sort of stuff? Like coming up with voices for characters? And things?
Although I get a lot of requests to do characters that were either a version of George or a version of Duckman. Okay. So I loved, one of the nice things about the Kody Kapow thing is that I'm basically doing Bert Lahr. It's like, hey, Kody, it's Bert Lahr with a touch of Paul Lynde. They're generally fun to do. First of all, most of them are for younger audiences, and you go, this is great, happy to do that. The people that are behind the scenes at animation are just goofballs. So the sessions are always fun. The worst part of it is that you're just rarely working with the other actors. It's all done as one, and then they put it all together. But there's nothing not fun about it. It's completely freeing. You can try anything. You would never, in any move you do, go, and all of a sudden they go, yeah, can we get 10 of those? Can we get a library of those? I don't even know what it is, but, sure.
Duckman, how did you come up with that voice?
On the spot. Yeah. Duckman was really, they said, sardonic, detective, and the Duckman scripts for a half-hour show, they were like 60-page scripts. So you had to fly. And I went, all right, Detective Joe Friday, yeah, and the Duckman. And then there was a signature line, which is, what the hell are you staring at? And it was in the thing, and I had this long monologue, and I went, what the hell are you staring at? And they went, that's it. I went, all right, okay. It was just, I don't know. It just came out. They showed me a picture. I went, it sounds like this, and...
So you record first, and then they animate later?
Yeah. Most of the time. Sometimes, if you're doing animation that was done in a foreign language, now you have to get it into that mouth, like a regular ADR session. But most of the time, it's animation first.
I love it. One of your latest projects is the new TV series, which I love, Hit the Road. Anybody see Hit the Road yet?
How could you? Yeah. Does anybody have DirecTV in this town? It's like, DirecTV is not, it doesn't have a huge New York base. Spectrum, I think, is the big, or Xfinity or something.
I have a friend that has it. I had to go to a friend's house to watch it. Yeah. But it's a really great series. You're the co-creator, executive producer, and star. What can you tell us about it?
Take the Shameless family.
Yep.
Stick them on a tour bus pretending to be the Partridge Family, and that's the show. So it's a family, mother, father, teenage daughter, teenage son, young daughter, and an adopted young teenage African-American kid. They have no scruples, they have no morals, and they'll do anything to be rich and famous. And it is filthy. In the pilot episode, our band is opening for an old rock and roller. The beautiful teenage daughter doesn't want to be doing our music or be on our band, so she's having a sexual affair with that guy and is so aggressive in bed that in the pilot, she kills him. She literally, she fornicates him to death. When our family finds out, we go, okay, all right, this is our gig now. We'll do like a thing. And we take over the theater and all the expenses, but now there's no audience because they were only coming to see that guy. And I need promotion from the radio station, so I go down with my black adopted son because the DJ was black, and I think, I'll make a sympathy thing here. And it doesn't work because he doesn't get to do it, and I have to get permission from the sales manager, and he comes back from talking to the sales manager that says he'll give you the free publicity, but he's kind of an odd guy, and he wants you to give him a hand job. And I, as you can imagine, without much enthusiasm, go, so my adopted son is waiting in the lobby while I go into the men's room where I've been told he's waiting, and I see this guy and I throw him against the urinal, and I don't want to talk, I don't want to hear anything, I don't look at me, we're gonna do this, and you're gonna give me what I need, and it's never, and I basically, and the kid walks in while I'm doing this to see that. Then when I come out to explain it to him, the DJ comes and says, yeah, the guy will be in there in a minute. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, no, that wasn't, no. So I raped a man in the men's room, and now I still have to do the other guy. And this is just the pilot. It builds from there. So it is incredibly raunchy, but funny. And it has been such a blast to do because we do things. I mean, we sat in that writer's room going, we can't do that, and then we can. So it's kind of crazy.
Great cast, too.
Great cast. Kids are magical. They all sing, they all play, and they. Amy Peets, if you know Amy Peets, a wonderful television and theater actress, plays my wife, and it's a blast. We haven't been officially told if we're coming back or not, but I'm hoping so because it's just stupid fun.
You can see a lot of clips online, too. It's really hilarious. Hit the road. We have a few questions from the audience. From Nick, he says, do you have a favorite or at least favorite moment from your time as George?
Yeah, sure. No, but I can BS my way through this. We threw out 2 episodes. No, sorry. We threw out 1 episode and we almost threw out another. The one we threw out was called The Gun. And it was a story about there had been robberies in the neighborhood, so Elaine decided to purchase a gun. You gotta be really funny once a gun shows up. And I remember the one scene where she and Jerry go to a gun store to buy the gun, and she's in the car and she's feeling the power of the gun, and this was the line, wow, where do you want it, Jerry? The Kennedy, the McKinley, and we went, oh my God. That script was thrown out. And then there was one called The Briss that we actually did, and it takes a lot to rankle me as a Jew. I love Jew jokes, and you can push the limit. But they had written the Moyle, the guy who does The Briss, as an alcoholic, child-hating, just ugly man. And I went to Larry and I said, you are taking one of the most misunderstood personas in Judaism and throwing it like red meat to every anti-Semite out there. And I said, I can't do this episode. And he softened it some. I mean, I did it, but I was never really thrilled with that one. So that was probably the least happy time. The most surprising fun I think we ever had was in The Marine Biologist. Yeah, it's a good episode. So George's storyline actually ended in the script when he walks out into the ocean to confront the whale. That was it. Then there was a coffee shop scene that George wasn't in. And we were doing the show in front of the audience, and they did the scene, and it just it didn't feel like a big finale to that episode. And the writers kind of circled the wagons for a minute, and Larry came over and said, if I wrote you a monologue, how fast could you learn it? I said, a couple minutes, I guess. How long could it be? And he writes, the sea was angry that day, my friend. And got the notion that, because Kramer had been hitting golf balls into the ocean, that it had been a golf ball stuck in the whale's blowhole. And he wrote this monologue, and we went, oh, that's so good. So we ran it once while the audience couldn't see it, but we just didn't know. We couldn't waste any more time. So that take that you see is the one and only take, and really the one and only time we ever played that monologue with everybody doing the reactions that they do. And when I pull that golf ball out of my pocket, that was almost a 1 minute laugh. Now think about a 1 minute laugh. That's a long laugh. It just kept going and growing and growing, and then eventually Michael Kramer would say, is that a titleist? All in one. The fact that they would not let that episode go until they had an ending they believed in, and then came up with that in the clutch, I just went, these guys are off the chart. They're off the chart.
That's wonderful. From Joe, do you work on your characters the same way every time you work on a new role?
Yep. That is what I teach. It doesn't matter what the character is or what the material is or what the medium is. Technique is technique is technique is technique. Everything else has technicalities. Songs have technicalities. Shakespeare has technicalities. Commercials, movies, everything has technicalities. Technique doesn't change.
You have this wonderful career. What keeps you so grounded?
Yeah. So I grew up wanting to be an actor on the stage in New York. That was the goal. They're not generally celebrities. I never had any fantasies about television or film or excuse me, even celebrity. I mean, you know, a New York theater celebrity, maybe, was in the back of my head, but excuse me, nothing beyond that. Everything that, all the amazing things that happened in my career came, you know, over a period of time. It didn't all, you know, like Julia Roberts, when we did Pretty Woman, was an unknown one day, and then that movie opened and she was the biggest star in the world. That can screw you up. That never happened to me. Everything came in very small chunks. And my real life, for whatever reason, I got married when I was 22. My wife and I are now in year 37 with our 2 boys.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that world has always been equally, if not more valuable to me than all this other stuff. I mean, it's always clear to me that the career is going to end. It's, you know, it's going to stop. And my boys had a really, I think I impressed them one time. Julia had just gotten a star on the Walk of Fame, and I had gone to be part of her ceremony. And my son said, "Do you have one?" I went, "No." And they said, "Does that bother you?" I said, "If I wanted one, I could probably get it. It costs about $50,000 and somebody has to put it up." I said, "Guys, I'm going to tell you the truth. I mean, I love that. I love that I get to go through the world the way I go through the world. It's generally a very nice thing." I said, "When I'm dead, there's only 2 people in the world that I care about how they remember me, and I'm looking at both of them." And they went, and that just is generally true. So it's not about being grounded. It's just about I look at all the mishigas of celebrity as mishigas. I'm just a guy that goes to work. My work happens to be, I tell stories, and sometimes it looks glamorous, and you know, and I'm always aware of the fact people go, "Oh, hey, thank you for your work. I really love your work." And I go, "Do you ever say that to a cop or a soldier or a teacher or the sanitation worker? Because, you know, their work actually probably affects you more on a day-to-day basis than mine does." It's always been clear to me that the response to our business is a little unreal and a little glorified. And I get a little embarrassed by it all. Like when you're running my introduction, the worst 5 words to me in show business, the worst 5 are, "Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Alexander." That makes me go, I didn't get into this to be me. I got into this to play with other people and hide behind characters and to have this fun magic trick of creating these illusions. That is not the celebrity part. So I, for the most part, don't care about that part. Yeah. And and sometimes it kind of embarrasses me. And I guess that's what makes me go,
Sure.
So
That goes into my final question is, what is the best bit of advice that you have been given, either personally or professionally, that you live by?
Boy, there's a lot.
Yeah.
It's the one that I preach all the time now and that I've been able to do for the last half of my career. But now everyone is able to do it, and everyone must. When I was a younger guy and you were an actor, you needed permission to do what we do. You needed a stage, you needed a production. You certainly couldn't do film or television without that. You couldn't get an audience. And the internet and technology have put the tools of all that into all of our hands. You can make, Kelly O'Hara has a web series now called The Accidental Wolf. If you haven't seen it, you should try and find it. It's all New York theater actors. They make every episode for under $10,000. It looks like $1 million, and it's kind of like a poor man's Homeland. It's thrilling, and they're little 8-minute episodes. She doesn't have to do that. Long way of saying, if you wait for someone to give you a job, you're going to waste your life. Make a job. Make a job. Find the stories you want to tell and go get them. Find your writers. Find your directors. You all have cameras. You all have a space. It doesn't matter where we do these shows. If it's theater, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a stage or a theater. It can be in a park. It can be in a parking lot. It can be anywhere that you can have people watch the stories you want to tell. Very few people get to make a satisfactory living doing this. If you're in it to make that living, you're in the wrong business. If you do this because it's what you have to do, no one can stop you anymore. But you have to go out and make things happen. And the greatest thing you can do is put other people to work. Even if it's, my son is on stage almost every night in LA. I don't think he makes $50 a week, but he's part of 7 improv groups. He is part of a 2-man sketch comedy group that has a monthly show. He's building a reputation in LA. He's on SNL's radar. He's auditioned for them 3 times. He's got little videos on the web as a result of all this. All his friends are making short films. All his friends are making little web series. He's part of all of this because he's built that community. There is not a day that he is not working as a writer or an actor or a director. Not one. And, you know, he's still young, so he's happy to make his $50 a week, and it's enough. But if he was waiting for the agent to send him on the thing, he would now be on 4 months of waiting. He doesn't wait. So go build something. Go do something. Don't wait.
Well, I want to thank you for one of the most insightful afternoons. It was a master class. You have 2 more weeks to see this comic genius and the rest of them in the Portuguese Kid at Manhattan Theater Club. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Alexander.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Happy holidays.